Okay, we're going to tie a Klinkhammer Adams, which is basically a gray mayfly on a Klinkhammer hook. And these hooks are shaped a little odd, so they have a flat top and they're designed to hang with the abdomen further in the water. So we'll work on the proportions as we tie it, because if you haven't used these before, they're a little different. Okay, so we want to start the thread. The thread is a UTC 70 denier white, and we want to go down the back and then to the midpoint. So that'll put the post right in the middle of the thorax. Okay, so for the post, we're going to use McFlylon. It's not as grabby as some of the Poly Pros, so I like it better. For the tail, we're going to use whiting tailing material. For the abdomen, we're going to use the turkey feather. It's customary, or most of the tying is done with a Biot, these feathers in the leading edge. But we're going to use a slip to build the abdomen. And then a good old grizzly hackle whiting size for a 14 hook. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. I think I mentioned the Daiichi, but that's the 1160 size 14. All right. So putting it in the middle, that sets the post right in the middle of the thorax. Now what we'll do is we'll take our McFlylon, we'll set it at the tie-in point. We want to make it about twice as long as from the tie-in point to the hook eye and then beyond that. So this is about 2x that distance. And then, actually I've let it unwind. I want it to be fairly tight. So I'm spinning it clockwise, and that tightens up this thread. So, one nice wrap, second wrap right on top of it, good and tight. Now don't let up the tension here. Pull that back and do 3 wraps underneath, and that locks it in, and we need it locked in for the next step. And then what I do, rather than try to figure out the length and the midpoint, I just tie them on that way, pick up the back end of this, cut it to the same length. And so that's simpler than trying to find the midpoint and get everything sized, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this sideways on the hook. I'm going to take this piece and come towards the camera, this piece and come away from the camera, and then that'll make an X wrap. And that's why it needs to be tight here. Okay, so we're going to just take those and turn them. And you can see they're turned. A couple of wild fifths. Now what I like to do is I'll kind of switch hands and preen it a little bit. And now I hold the near side with my left hand, and I make 2 wraps, which will be an X with the first 2, keeping everything tight, lock it, and then I comb it forward and make a few wraps behind. Charlie Craven mentions in one of his videos that the secret to getting to posting flies is to get a good anchor point so that your post doesn't move around. And so what we do next to make that happen, we're going to wrap right on the back of the hook. We'll do 3 more wraps, cinch them nice and tight again. Okay, and then do your lock down, just a couple wraps. Okay, that makes a pretty good post, and now we can walk up the hook, and we'll go about halfway up. But walk up the post, we'll go about halfway. And what I do is I'll make especially low here, make a wrap, stretch, make a wrap, stretch, make a wrap, stretch. Make sure the wraps are touching, and then you can start doing 2 or 3 or 4 wraps. And we're going to go halfway up. That gives us plenty of room to tying the hackle. Now we go down. You want to keep these turns together going down. So if you have any gaps, when you're hackling, the hackle will fall into them and things get goofy. Okay, now we're ready to start building the thorax, so we're going to move to the abdomen. Now, some tires go ahead and put the hackle in at this point. It just gets in my way, so I delay that as long as I can. Okay, so there's our... Now, somebody in a video I watched mentioned you want the body, the abdomen, to be shaped like a carrot, which I thought was a pretty good image. And so we're going to do some wraps, shaping it up like a carrot. Hopefully y'all can see on the camera it's looking like a carrot. So you kind of wrap up at the top end, and then you go down a little ways, and then you go back. So you go back and forth like that for a while, and I hope you can see the carrot forming. But that's what we're trying to do. But you can see now the thorax taking shape here. Do a couple of wraps up there. Okay, so we'll keep going down. And then once we get to the bottom, I'll show you your next proportion step. And that should be good, so we're going down. And on this one, you want to wrap until that thread's about parallel with the hook point. Okay, so there we go. So that gives you then the proportion. So you have your proportion here with your post in the middle of your thorax, and your abdomen, then you go from the thorax to the thread being parallel with the hook. That gives you your other proportion. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn this thing down. Okay. I do that because I can't, where it ends there, I can't tie in the tails, so I just have to turn it. If you can figure out a way to tie in the tails, that's great. If not, just turn it in the vise and it'll be fine. And you take about 5 or 6 fibers off of the whatever you're using for a tailing material. Fairly thin is okay, because in the real world they're fairly thin. And then my length is from the tip of the eye to almost where the tie-in point is. Okay, so we put it there. Get the loose wrap, and then you check it, see if you like it. It's a little long for my taste, so I'm going to pull it back just a tick. Okay, and you can see it's nice and square, so we'll go ahead and bind that down. Okay, we're up at the carrot, so we'll trim that off. I'm going to go ahead and spin this to flatten it out, get that as neat as I can. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this hook a little bit. Yeah, I know I keep monkeying with hooks, but what are you going to do? I do this because I tie a lot of scud hooks, and this piece is like a scud, and I find that I can tie the scud hooks easier if I lay the thing on its side. So it's typically what I do with the scud hooks, and it seems to work for me here too. Okay, so now we're back to the tie-in point for the tail, or where the tail ends, and we're going to tie in the body. Now you can look at, there's some web articles, Turkey Biot and Goose Biot. So you might want to look at those and sort of figure out what's what there. Anyway, so I'm going to just not take a slip, and you want to tear it off, and I'll show you why in a second. It helps you orient. There's one side of these slips that are translucent, and one side that are not. And you can see there's a notch. Let me cut this piece away, it'll be easier to see it. I just normally tie with that on there, but now you can see that notch, I think, pretty easy on top. Well, this piece along the top is translucent, so if you tie this in that way, then when you make your first tie, it'll fold over, and that translucent part will be in the back of the wrap, and you'll get a segmented body. That's not what we're after. I want a ridged body. So I'm going to turn it over with the notch down. I'll cut a little bit of the tip off, which I just did. And then I'm going to tie it on. Now here you want to be careful that when you wrap it on, you don't twist it. Because if you do, you're going to have just exactly what you didn't want. Okay, so I get that in there. All right. Now the other thing, these are fairly fragile, these slips. And so I've found that wrapping them with the hackle pliers is the way to go, and then you'll make the fly a little more robust if you add just a bit of Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. It's available all over the place. And it's a pretty nice adhesive for this type of work. Okay, so I get that with my hackle pliers, and don't cut it on the hook. Okay, you might see that first ridge, and there's a little dark spot, and that's the translucent part laying down. That's my aim point when I come around. That's how I keep the ridges where I want them. And you try to keep this hackle as square as you can to the hook. A little bit too much. There we go. Okay, now we're wrapped in, so we're going to get the thread and get it behind the hackle pliers, a couple, 3 nice tight wraps, and then we can just trim off this leftover piece. Okay, so tidy it up a little bit. All right, so then I'm going to stand it up, move it again. There's only one more move left. Oops, missed that piece of tailing material. Sorry about that. Cleaning up here. All right. So now the next step is we're going to tie in the hackle feather. Now I guess I understand there's a raging debate as to whether it wants to go cup up or cup down. I like it cup up, just seems to me easier. But if you want to wrap it the other way, that's fine by me. So I kind of get it up here, and I want to also have it pointed, laying just a little bit slanted, the cup that way, and then it seems to want to twist just a little bit. So my vice is trying to let go. All right, so I wrap this up nice and tight. Then I do a last wrap around the post. And then I bring the feather here and then up. Now my feather, the shiny side is here, and the other side's toward the camera. And the reason I put this behind is now with 2 wraps, I can catch the feather, and then I just do neat wraps going down. Okay, now I'm going to put on some dubbing. I like the split thread dubbing. A little more monkeying around, but whatever reason, that's what I do. So I don't mind monkeying around, I guess. So I wisp that out pretty thin. It'll thin out even more than that. It just doesn't take much dubbing to do this. All right, now this thing is called a pin vise. I got it for a few bucks. It's cheaper than the $70, $80 ones. Whoops, I knocked my dubbing off. Oh, there it is. Okay, still there. So you kind of comb behind and you can see it flattening out the thread, I think. And you put a finger on the vise, kind of steady me. Like that split. Yeah, that's better. The other one's too thin on one side. Okay. I find if I hold that parallel to the table, that's nice. Get it in, and then the other thing I'll do is I'll stretch it out some more. Don't want this much. Okay, now I'll spin it for a little while. All right. Do a little more. I really like these tight for this fly. You know, for most things I do, that's enough. But for some reason, I like it tighter. Like that. You can see it's fairly tight. Got a couple of blobby spots. All right, so then we back here, a couple wraps. We want it to be thicker around the post, so we catch a few wraps there. Come in front, do a couple wraps back to the post. And now we just kind of go back and forth around the post, fill that in. And then the last wrap, I'm going to leave that behind the post because once again, I'm going to move this thing. Be the final time. It's if I set the post this way, this is a more natural way to hackle and also to whip finish. So that's what I do. Okay, so we get sometimes the feathers want to twist and you have to talk them into doing the right thing. Here we go. I hit the dubbing. I usually go around one more time. Now, the next part of the process, we're going to try not to trap any of these fibers. So I pull the feather that way, and I keep my bobbin way below those fibers. Scrape the top, below the fibers, up over the eye, scrape the fibers, the dubbing. Okay. So I get those two wraps in, and that'll hold this feather, and I cut it. And I got one stray here. Okay. Now all I have left is the whip finish. Some people go ahead and glue it at this point, and that's good, no problem. Some people tie around the eye. I'd go ahead and just whip finish over the post. But what I have found is that this is a standard whip finisher, and this is a long reach. And I just like the long reach for this job. It makes it a little easier, so that's what I use. Okay, so we're gonna, again, you notice I pull away from those fibers, try to keep from trapping them. I like to do two separate. I'll do 4 wraps and then finish it off, and I'll do another 3. Okie dokie. And there we go, a Klinkhammer. Adams, you see the nice body. I like that ridged body. And there we are.